Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Funding for two key security measures remains at a stalemate in Congress. Senate negotiators failing to make a deal on border security and funding for Ukraine. Republicans pushing hard to have the two measures tied together. A historic surge at the southern border continues to strain resources, while Ukraine warns it's getting dangerously low on supplies and munitions in their war against Russia. As Senate negotiators work to finish a deal, the House is already out of session, not scheduled to return until January 9th unless called back to D.C. For residents and farmers living in Ukraine, the realities of war continues. Recently, Howard G. Buffett and his foundation teamed up with the German Marshall Fund of the United States to share the message of what's happening in the rural parts of the country. Called the Whistlestops for Ukraine tour, it began in Minnesota, where the ambassador to Ukraine shared the challenges ahead. From the fields of Ukraine to the halls of Washington, history is being written.
And we have been survivors for over 1,000 years looking for that elusive freedom and self-determination for Ukraine.
A message being shared room by room.
And all the sacrifice that the United States had made, we're just very, very rich and lucky in terms of the business interests we have here.
And crowd by crowd. As the story of what's happening in Ukraine is told.
We are fighting this fight every day. There are barrages of missiles and Shahid drones on peaceful cities every day, but we will stay the course. But we need you, our friends, to stay this course with us.
From families to soldiers to farmers.
The largest industry that has been devastated in Ukraine is agriculture. And when you see it, it's pretty overwhelming.
The realities on the ground hit home.
You have seen combines that are blown up. You have seen farmers that have died in their fields as a result of it. You've seen crops that have been burned.
An investment in one of the most fundamental and important relationships in the international system.
This is the first of a number of whistle-stop tours hosted by the German Marshall Fund of the United States and the Howard G. Buffett Foundation. The goal? Educating the public and explaining the impact the war is having in Ukraine and around the world.
This entire Whistle Stop tour is about making sure that communities in the United States understand fundamentally what's so important about Ukraine and that our communities are joining together. We lift up those voices. We provide that hope.
From civic and government leaders to ag groups and Ukrainian American communities, each stop is focused on what's happening now and why it's important.
Minnesotans understand the value and importance of community, of freedom, of fighting for what's important. We know how important the land is, protecting that land, nourishing that land, feeding people. That commonality is what we want to highlight.
As the front lines rage across Ukrainian farms,
30% of the country has to be surveyed for landmines.
America's ag producers are learning about ways to help.
Could I add one thing? Can I just ask President Conley, what did you hope to come out of this conversation?
How can I help? What can I do? Understand the implications of this. It's the right thing to do. It's the moral argument. And if that doesn't persuade you, there's the economic benefit.
As a country and an industry fight their way toward recovery.
You can't end the humanitarian crisis until you win the war. And so, we've already put out 132 million food boxes on the front line, most of them all on the front line. That's crazy that you are feeding that many people. And half of those people are farmers.
Farmers fighting for a future.
I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. Okay, I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime in terms of the impact on global food security, local food security, and on an agricultural community at the scale that this has happened. When a farmer talks to me about Ukraine, I tell them there's no option. They're farmers, we're farmers, we have to help them.